When the narcissist goes to therapy. Contrary to popular belief, narcissists will sometimes go to therapy. They usually just don't go for the same reasons other people do. But my name is Jared Mello, the wizard of radical self-respect and the shepherd of black sheep. I help people to practice radical self-respect in their lives, and I help them to get clarity and give them guidance on their situations, no matter what it is. But jumping right into the video here, yeah, narcissists do sometimes go to therapy, but they won't go for the kinds of reasons other people go a lot of times. For example, usually they will not go because they think they have a problem. Often what will happen is they think someone else is the problem, and what they want is advice on how to control that other person and how to deal with this other person, because they know they're not the problem. They think this other person is completely the problem, and that's the attitude they come into therapy with. Or what might happen is there is a devastating life experience that happens to them. They really bottom out. They maybe get an ultimatum from a partner that says, you go to therapy or I'm leaving you. And the narcissist actually listens and they go to therapy. Or there could be some other disaster that brings them there. That is usually the prerequisite of what happens. But a big issue for narcissists in therapy is, can they be honest with their therapist? A lot of times they can struggle to be honest with themselves, but then by default they aren't going to be honest with the therapist, and often they can play nice with the therapist, as Dr. Salerno mentioned in my interview with him. But they'll play nice and they'll toy with the therapist, and when that happens, no real therapy is getting done. But what is happening more than likely is the narcissist is getting supply from actually going to therapy and getting the therapist to agree with their perception of reality. And granted, the narcissist's perception of reality, they are often lying to the therapist about what's going on or twisting and distorting what's going on. They might blame the person that sent them to therapy and say, that person's the entire problem. It's not me. It is definitely them. And they paint this picture of the people around them that the other people are the problem. And that is a big thing narcissists will do. They externalize the blame. And it's one of the clues that you can see. If you see people externalizing the blame instead of taking a look at their side of the street, that is something to watch out for. Character disordered people, as Dr. George Simon would say, that is their forte. But while in therapy, they'll say it's everyone else's fault, but it's not their fault. And they'll say, it's basically a smear campaign. But when the therapist hears all of this, unless the therapist is really well trained to spot narcissists, which unfortunately a lot of them are not, because they are not learning about narcissism in their curriculum. Unless they've done the work on their own to learn about narcissism and their behaviors, they don't know. Because how the behaviors of narcissism are presented in the DSM, it is not the same as what it would look like in real life. The behaviors of a narcissist in real life look a little different than what the DSM would say. So it takes a different skill set to notice what grandiosity looks like, to notice what entitlement looks like, and to notice about the feelings of grandiosity and feeling of superiority. Like, it's one thing to read it on a paper, but to see it in action is a different ballgame. And a lot of therapists, they aren't able to see through the narcissist BS. And the narcissist can sometimes sense this and they'll toy with the therapist. And sometimes they'll just get bored and they'll leave. And they'll do that if there wasn't some sort of ultimatum there. But say there is a narcissist that gets seen through. The therapist sees them for what they are, and they say, oh yeah, this person is a narcissist. Now, if the therapist can recognize that, they probably won't confront them with that right away, because they know narcissists are extremely sensitive to criticism. They're not going to take well to that. But what they might do instead is build some rapport with the narcissist, and very gently at some point, they might try to offer a suggestion to them, or offer them a different point of view. Very gently, and they're going to have to sandwich it between some compliments as well, or it's not going to get listened to. But that's the one thing they can try to do. Because if the therapist doesn't do that, and they call the narcissist out on anything, the narcissist is very likely just to simply leave treatment, because they are very sensitive to criticism. But one of the things the narcissist will do is they will weaponize their therapist against their family members or their partner. And one of the ways they might do this is they'll say, my therapist agrees with me on this, or my therapist said, you really need to work on that, or my therapist said, you're wrong on this. And chances are, the therapist doesn't know the whole story, because often the narcissist is lying to their therapist, and if the therapist doesn't know the whole story, how are they going to offer good suggestions? They're not going to be able to. So if you're in a situation where the narcissist is saying to you, my therapist said this, my therapist said that, trust but verify. If you didn't hear the therapist say it out of their own mouth, I wouldn't be so certain. And even if you did hear it, I would then have to make sure, does the therapist know the whole story? Chances are they probably don't. But just don't take it at face value that what the narcissist says, the therapist has said, is true. Often it is not, because to a narcissist, lying is absolutely second nature. But that is a lot of times what happens. And in therapy, the goal is behavior modification. And what will happen is the therapist will come up with goals for the narcissist to strive for. They'll have a treatment plan, and they'll have points that they're going to try to get them to. And if the narcissist agrees on those points, they can try to collaborate to get to that point together. But of course, as we know, narcissists really struggle with collaboration, they really struggle with problem solving, and they really struggle with conflict resolution. So all of these pain points along the way are points where the narcissist will often leave treatment. It's unfortunate, but it's another one of the reasons why so few narcissists do improve. The big reason, first and foremost, is they almost never admit they have a problem. And if they don't admit they have a problem, they can't even begin the process of doing something about it. Because like I said originally, they are not usually going to therapy at first because they think there's a problem with them. Usually they'll think there's a problem with somebody else, or they'll want advice on how to deal with that other person, or they've been given some sort of ultimatum, or maybe they've been court-ordered. But none of those are, yeah, I admit I have a problem and I want to try to get better. Very seldomly will you see that. Now, there are some self-aware narcissists out there too. We see them in the community. They talk about it on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube, but it is more seldom that happens that way. But the narcissist doesn't think there's an issue with them, so they don't really even begin the process of change. Once they're there, though, it would take a really skilled therapist to be able to tiptoe around all of those trigger points that the narcissist has, because the narcissist will have a lot of trigger points. If you're honest with them, you call them out about something, their sensitivity to criticism will come up, or the narcissist simply thinks they're never wrong. And if you point out something as the therapist that you think the narcissist is wrong about, they're not going to like that very much. But working on the behavior modification piece, that's the part that could be possible for them. And we see that with Lee Hammock. He chronicles his journey of therapy, and we don't know what he's like behind closed doors. But to me, I'm a pretty good judge of character. I got a sixth sense for it. He does seem to be genuine to me. And so take that for what it's worth. But if a narcissist says they're in therapy, don't automatically think either that they're being honest with their therapist and doing good therapy work while they're there. A lot of times, they are absolutely not. Any change, you're going to want to see it with your own two eyes. If you don't see the change in their actions, it doesn't matter one bit what they say. Trust those actions more than anything they will say. Because narcissists are great at talking up a good game. They'll say they're changing. They'll say they're doing so awesome. Their therapist is so proud of them. Meanwhile, behind closed doors, they're being the same old jerk that they always were. So don't fall for those words. Those words can really trick a lot of people. Any change, you're going to want to see it in their actions, or I wouldn't believe it if I were you. And granted, this doesn't happen very often, but there are certainly times that narcissists go to treatment. Some therapists even say that they've really been able to help them, and the narcissist has improved. Now, again, I'd want to see it with my own two eyes before I would agree to that, but I'll take their word for it. Dr. Salerno told me that that's what some professionals have told him, so I'll take the word for it with that. But this is generally what happens when the narcissist goes to therapy. They can weaponize it. Sometimes they'll get ammunition also. They'll learn about some therapist lingo, and then they will twist and distort that lingo and weaponize it against the people around them. And that's one of the narcissist's favorite games, the triangulation between the therapist and their family members or their romantic partner. And an example of this would be, maybe you call out a narcissist, and the narcissist may say, "You're using word salad against me. My therapist told me about that you might use word salad, and here you are using word salad." Meanwhile, calling them out on something or communicating a boundary with them is not word salad at all. But that's what they're twisting and distorting. They're trying to use the lingo that they might hear in therapy against you. Another one I've heard them say a lot is the you statements. You're making a you statement. You're making a you statement. And I personally have never understood that one very much, because how do you address something with someone without saying you sometimes? To me, it's very difficult, so I've never bought that. Another big one would be, say if you take a break from a conversation with them, they might try to say, "You're giving me the silent treatment." Or, as I talked about recently, if you go no contact with the narcissist, they might say, "You're being abusive. You're giving me the silent treatment. You're being childish and immature." All of these are just ridiculous, because no contact is a boundary to protect ourselves. It's a way that we enforce our boundaries, and no one can tell us that our boundaries are wrong. Boundaries are a very personal process for everybody. No one should be telling other people what their boundaries should and should not be. My whole philosophy on that is, if you feel like going no contact is the best decision for you, great. If you don't feel that way, and maybe you want to lower contact with somebody, or maybe you simply need more clear boundaries, that's fine too. But I don't think we should be really judging how other people choose to live their lives. If they think no contact is best, okay. If they don't, okay again. But all any of us can do is work on our side of the street. But I had said that just to give examples of how the narcissist will twist and distort what they hear in therapy and then try to weaponize it against you. It's just another thing to pay attention to. And again, if the narcissist says their therapist said this, that, or the other, trust and verify. Again, it's really difficult to trust and verify though, because confidentiality, how do you know? You can't ask the therapist, well, what did the narcissist say in therapy? They're not going to tell you. So chances are it's going to be hard to get to the bottom of it. But what you do is trust their actions. That's the one thing that will speak loud and clear. The words will be whatever, but their actions will communicate to you loud and clear. Are they respecting you? Are they changing any of their behaviors? Are they taking any accountability? Are they able to genuinely apologize in any way? Are they able to admit when they're wrong? Are they able to do any of those things? I mean, if they're not, probably not much has changed. And that's what you really need to pay attention to. But that's a short overview here of what it's like when the narcissist goes to therapy. They do occasionally go to therapy. It's not a lot, but they do. And usually they go for a different reason at first. Rarely it's because they think they have a problem, but they do wind up going. And occasionally while they're there, some of them get diagnosed with narcissism, and occasionally the patient, the narcissist, accepts the diagnosis, and occasionally they may try to work on it. People like Lee Hammock, like I said. But is that always what happens? Absolutely not. Often what can happen is, if they get diagnosed as a narcissist, they might simply refuse it and leave. or maybe they're called out about one of their double standards or problematic behaviors, and they leave therapy because of that. That absolutely happens too. But a very skilled therapist who understands narcissism and understands how sensitive to criticism they can be, and how often a narcissist might be lying, because they do lie so often that it's second nature to them. You really have to understand the nature of the beast and how manipulative and toxic they can be. A lot of narcissists take advantage of people that don't truly understand how manipulative and toxic, and how they're willing to do whatever it takes to get what they want and to avoid accountability. And it's like I always say, everything they do will be about power, control, image, narcissistic supply, and avoiding accountability. When you put their actions through that lens, they will make sense. They will almost always make sense when you put it through that lens. If you don't put it through that lens, then it doesn't make sense. But that's what a skilled therapist will be able to do. They'll be able to see, okay, you're BSing me here, or you're lying to me here, or you're not being fully transparent and honest here. You need to tell me the truth. But again, they're going to have to do that in a gentle way, or the narcissist will simply leave treatment. But this was a basic overview here of what to look out for when the narcissist goes to therapy, how they weaponize the therapist against you, weaponize what they hear against you, or maybe they're there just to get some validation and supply from the therapist, even though the narcissist isn't saying anything that is truthful. They're just giving distortions and lies and getting validated on that. Still, the narcissist may still like that. But those are the reasons why a narcissist may go to therapy. But if you got this far, please remember to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Like the video if you liked it. Comment below what you thought about this video. Have you had an experience with a narcissist in therapy? How did that go? Did they weaponize the therapist against you? Did they triangulate them with you? Did they weaponize the terms they heard against you? I would like to know, as would others as well. And maybe share this video with someone else that you think might benefit too. But with that, thank you very much for watching, and have a great rest of your day.